You don't feel it all at once. It starts as a quiet disturbance, a shift in the air. The same room, the same woman. But something is missing. Her laughter lands half a second late. Her eyes don't rest on you the way they used to. And you tell yourself you're overthinking, because that's what men do when the truth feels too heavy to carry. But listen to me closely. Your intuition doesn't panic without reason. It whispers first. Imagine this. She's sitting across from you, phone face down on the table. Not because she's hiding anything, at least that's what she says, but because suddenly, privacy matters more than presence. She smiles. She nods. She's here. Yet emotionally, she's already rehearsing a goodbye you haven't been invited to. This is where it begins. Welcome to Female Code Unlocked. This is the place where attraction, attachment, and betrayal are stripped of their excuses and exposed for what they truly are. If you're ready to see clearly, without illusion, subscribe now. Because awareness isn't comforting, it's liberating. When she's about to cheat, she doesn't wake up one morning and decide to destroy everything. No, she slowly disconnects first, because guilt is easier to manage when attachment is already fading. She becomes emotionally efficient. Shorter replies, fewer follow-up questions, less curiosity about your inner world. You'll notice something subtle. She stops leaning in emotionally. Your problems feel like interruptions. Your presence feels tolerated. And here's the part that hurts the most. She starts treating your consistency like background noise. The man who once felt grounding now feels predictable. And predictability, when attraction is unprotected, turns into invisibility. Another sign appears quietly. She rewrites history. Moments that once felt intimate suddenly get rebranded as never that deep. Arguments get exaggerated. Your mistakes get polished and replayed in her mind like justification trailers. This isn't random. It's psychological preparation. Before betrayal becomes physical, it becomes narrative. She needs a story where she's not the villain. So she edits the past until cheating feels like self-rescue instead of self-betrayal. And then, the comparisons begin. Not always out loud. Sometimes just in the way her energy shifts when another man's name enters the room. A coworker, an old friend, he's just funny kind of guy. You feel it in your chest before you can explain it logically. She lights up differently. Not louder, just freer. Because novelty activates parts of her that comfort no longer reaches. Here's the dark truth most people won't tell you. Cheating isn't always about sex. It's about emotional expansion. When a woman feels unseen by herself, she looks for mirrors elsewhere. And when she starts outsourcing validation, loyalty quietly expires. Watch her boundaries. She'll start loosening rules she once defended. Suddenly, things that were disrespectful are now not a big deal. Late replies get justified. Vague explanations increase. Not because she's careless, but because her conscience is negotiating. And if you confront her too early, she won't confess. She'll deflect. You'll hear words like, "You're insecure. You're controlling. You don't trust me." Not because those things are true, but because shifting the focus buys time. Time to decide. Time to test. Time to emotionally detach while you're still standing there trying to hold the relationship together with logic. Here's what you must understand. When she's about to cheat, she's already halfway gone. Not in action, but in allegiance. And the most dangerous part? She still looks like the same woman. Same voice, same smile, same touch. But the intention behind it has changed. And intention is where everything begins. At this stage, you're not dealing with absence. You're dealing with duplication. She's still with you, but she's also elsewhere, emotionally rehearsing a version of herself that doesn't include your reactions, your needs, or your expectations. This is when her independence becomes performative. She starts emphasizing how busy she is, how she needs space, how she's finding herself. And none of those words are lies. They're just incomplete truths. Because what she's really doing is creating emotional distance large enough to fit another presence inside it, without immediately feeling like she's betraying you. You'll notice she becomes oddly calm during conflict. Not mature calm. Detached calm. Arguments that once triggered emotion now trigger indifference. She doesn't fight to be understood anymore. She lets misunderstandings sit, because she's no longer invested in repairing them. That's a crucial signal. When someone stops correcting how you see them, it's often because they no longer care how you interpret their absence. Another shift happens in her body language. Her touch becomes functional. Hugs feel shorter. Kisses feel like punctuation, not conversation. Sex, if it still happens, feels disconnected. Less eye contact, more routine, more, let's just get this done energy. Not because desire is gone, but because desire has relocated. Here's the psychological layer beneath it all. Her nervous system is already bonding elsewhere, and bonding doesn't require physical contact first. It starts with emotional secrecy. She stops sharing her inner world with you. Her thoughts, her doubts, her little daily stories. Those now belong to someone else, or at least to the fantasy of someone else. And secrecy is the seed of betrayal. You might catch her doing something subtle but revealing. She protects her phone emotionally before she protects you emotionally. Not aggressively, not suspiciously obvious. Just instinctively. A slight turn away. A screen tilted down. A pause before answering a simple question. Because when the heart is hiding, the body follows. She may also start testing your self-respect without realizing it. Small disrespect, canceled plans, last-minute changes, taking more than she gives. She's unconsciously checking something. How much will he tolerate while I emotionally drift? And if you over-explain, over-pursue, or over-fix, you answer that question for her in the worst possible way. Here's the hard truth you need to hear. A woman about to cheat is not searching for a better man. She's searching for a different version of herself, one that feels desired without accountability, wanted without history, alive without consequence. That's why logic doesn't pull her back. That's why reassurance feels ineffective. That's why your effort suddenly feels invisible. Because you're arguing with a decision that hasn't been verbalized, but has already been emotionally approved. And yet, this is not where your power disappears. This is where it returns. Because once you see the pattern, you stop begging for clarity from someone who's already chosen ambiguity. You stop trying to compete with a fantasy. You stop negotiating with distance. And something interesting happens when you do that. She feels it. Not because you confront her, not because you accuse her, but because your energy changes. Here's the part no one prepares you for. The moment you stop reacting is the moment the illusion starts to crack. Because when she's on the edge of cheating, she's relying on one thing more than secrecy: your predictability. She expects you to question, to worry, to chase reassurance the way a man chases oxygen when something feels off. So when you don't, when your tone steadies, your presence grounds, and your attention pulls inward instead of toward her confusion, it destabilizes the entire emotional structure she's been building. Not because you're playing games, but because you're no longer participating in her internal excuse-making. This is where dark psychology turns quiet. You stop over-explaining your value. You stop interrogating her behavior. You stop asking for clarity from someone who benefits from keeping things unclear. And suddenly, she has to sit with herself. She feels the absence of your emotional labor. The silence where reassurance used to live. The calm where anxiety once fed her sense of importance. That's when hesitation appears. Not fear of losing you, but fear of being seen clearly. Because cheating thrives in emotional fog. It needs confusion, chaos, and imbalance to survive. When you become centered, you remove the fog. Here's something most men misunderstand. You don't prevent betrayal by tightening your grip. You prevent it by becoming non-negotiable. Non-negotiable in your standards, non-negotiable in your self-respect, non-negotiable in the way you respond to distance, not with panic, but with presence. She starts noticing the shift. She senses that the version of you who would tolerate half connection is gone, that the man in front of her is no longer auditioning for loyalty. And now, cheating has a cost, not a dramatic confrontation, not a threat, but a quiet, terrifying realization that if she crosses that line, she doesn't get to return to the version of you who made her feel safe without accountability. This is when some women pull back from the edge. Not because you convinced them, but because you removed the emotional safety net beneath betrayal. And others? They go through with it anyway. But here's the truth that matters most. By the time she's close to cheating, the relationship is already revealing its truth. Not about her, about you. About whether you abandon yourself to preserve connection, or preserve yourself even if connection dissolves. Because the real loss isn't her attention. It's your center. And when you reclaim that, whether she stays or goes, you win something far more powerful than loyalty. You win clarity, you win dignity, you win emotional authority. And that is the one thing no betrayal can take from you. If this resonated, stay here. Because understanding the code doesn't just protect you from being hurt. It teaches you how to stand unshaken in a world that tests men quietly. This is Female Code Unlocked.